Okay, my name is Greg Helton, and I have seen Sasquatch many times. Okay, but before I actually get into my encounters, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. Okay, I grew up in the mountains of Colorado, so I was an avid watcher of all the animal documentaries I could. I went and tracked animals, learned as much as I could. Went into the military. Did a lot of adventurous things throughout my life. Okay, so one thing I can tell you the difference of is bears and Sasquatches or primates, because I used to watch just about anything that Dr. Jane Goodall put out. Okay, any thing that Diane Fossey put out. So, my background. Okay. I have an analytic mind. I try to debunk everything that I see or anybody else says they've seen. Any videos online or on TV shows. I can usually tell if it's blurs from someone's cell phone doing autofocusing because autofocusing is like, oh my god, look at the Sasquatch, compared it to people running in a suit or masks, all sorts of stuff. So uh, I'm going to start with my encounters, and each encounter will have a small picture of where I had the actual encounter. Like it'll be map view. Okay, I'm going to try to keep them brief because, I've had 7 in my life, and they were all pretty trippy and unique in their own rights. Okay. First one, when I was growing up in Colorado in a town called Manitou Springs, which I was up at a place called Williams Canyon. Okay, and I was kind of throwing rocks off the cliffside, big flat shale rocks, and I noticed down to my left that there were a large black primate. It was thin. It wasn't like the typical sassy, which was huge and thick and burly, but this one was really thin. But it did look like a female. Okay. But it was the really weird thing was it was holding a youngling. I mean, this thing was like tiny. This thing was probably maybe a year too old. I mean, it could move on its own somewhat, and I guess when I threw down the first rock onto the dirt road, it scared the crap out because I don't think they were expecting anybody around because the cliffs themselves are filled with caves, and then there's a huge cavern system underneath called the Cave of the Winds. Uh, that's like it's massive. It's like Carlsbad Caverns, but so I think there's a lot of access points that the humans haven't discovered yet, but these Sasquatches do. Okay, so it scared them really badly apparently, and she's trying to push the baby Sasquatch up into this one cave so I can't see them. Well, to my right, and I mean, I was only 10 years old when I seen these. Felt or heard something rustling in the bushes, and the bushes were about, waist high to me. Now, I'm thinking it was an adult Sasquatch or another younger Sasquatch, like a teen, but it was hiding on its belly because I didn't actually see it. But from what I know, lizards aren't going to shake a bush. Coyotes ain't going to shake a bush. Bears aren't going to because they'd just rather come at me. A Sasquatch, though, has been known to shake bushes or trees to scare people away, right? And that's literally what happened. So I'm thinking this one was trying to uh, get my attention away from the younger Sasquatches down below in the cliff, in the cave, or sorry, the canyon. And so it shake the bushes like crazy and scared the hell out of me, and I ran for it. Okay, I mean, I was 10 and I was short. Okay, ooh, itchy nose. The second one was about 4 years later. I was with my friend Greg Del Piano and my friend Sean Flanagan. Okay, Greg Del Piano, he had moved into Manitou area from New Jersey, right? And Sean Flanagan was from Harlem, New York. And so neither one of them were really woodsy people, right? Me, myself, I grew up in the mountains, so I love the mountains. And we decided to go camping one night. And as you see in the picture, we were up on Bar Trail. Well, just a few yards off of Bar Trail. Okay. And we were right near a little tiny pool area. For us, we were still adventurous young men, and we decided to go camping there. And throughout the night, we had fun. We were talking about girls. We were talking about what we were going to do throughout the rest of the summer. And then, I think about midnight. We were getting tired. So this was before I really knew a lot about fire safety, and we wanted to make sure that whatever bears or anything kind of kept their distance. So we just kind of let the fire die down. Right, we had built up a big rock ring, so that was a good thing. And we decided to go to sleep. And we were in one of those traditional little triangle pup tents, not the dome tents you see nowadays. Okay, and about I don't know, 2, 3 hours later, maybe if that, maybe about an hour later, something woke me up, and it wasn't like I heard sounds. What it was the light of the fire being stirred back up, and it like literally woke me up, right? And so I looked down at my feet because we had the tent unzipped because we didn't want a lot of moisture build up, and we were just like, it's a nice summer day or summer evening. So I look down and I see these two large hairy legs standing in between us and the fire. Okay, and the way the feet were, it was literally pointing towards the fire. And I think it was stirring the fire up and, checking it out. So I had Greg on one side, Sean on the other, and I shook them both awake quietly as I could, and then put my hands over their mouths so they wouldn't say anything, and I pointed down. Well, apparently that wasn't quiet enough because whatever it was, which was, I'm pretty sure was a Sasquatch, turned, stepped towards the tent, and this figure's shadow loomed the entire tent. It was covered the entire tent. I mean, this thing was big. I mean, I don't even think I saw the knees. I mean, that's how large it was. And all of a sudden, it's dawn. It's like 7 a.m. and I come to, but instead of being in the laying down position I was, like pinned against my back against the tent, sitting up. And so the only thing I could think of was I passed out from shock, and whatever popped its head in scared us so bad. My friends made them pass out, and they looked like they were like, trying to scramble out of the tent themselves, but through the sides of the tent. So the very next day, my friends didn't want to talk to me. They didn't. He didn't even want to stay in Manitou. He was just like, nope, we're not going to talk about what we saw. Blah blah blah. Even got irritated about it. Well, a day and a half after that, I find out Sean moved back to Harlem to his mom's house, because his parents were separated. And he wanted to basically face the gangs of Harlem instead of being in the mountains of Colorado. And his dad was pretty pissed off, and what happened. So I described him what happened, and he basically told us we were seeing a bear. Okay, if a bear poked its head into our tent, we would have probably been eaten. Okay, so we're going to fast forward this now to Oregon, state of Oregon. So or it was actually me, I was in Springfield, Oregon, and I had traveled over to Marcola to see a person I knew. Okay, Marcola is not a very far drive from Springfield, Oregon. And this area that I'm showing you on the picture was where I saw the Sasquatch. Okay, it was twilight. I'm driving back home. There was very few houses at all. So great areas for Sasquatches to walk around and not be seen at all. You know, this area though was, as you see, there's this little house with a garage, and that was the light, and it was huge. It was the half the size of one of the telephone poles almost. And I was just like, oh my god. And I looked as I drove by, and it just was standing there politely waiting for me to pass by. And apparently it's been hit several times, by humans or whatever. So it learned, hey, just wait till the car drives by. And as it does, I drive by, I look in my rearview mirror, and I see there's like cars behind me, and this creature's mask just blacked out the entire window of my van. But this thing was huge. I mean, this thing was massive, and there was a barbed wire fence to the left of the road where I was, and I went back the next day, and it was up to my waist, and I'm 6'1". Okay, and this thing, when it walked over the barbed wire fence, and it didn't move its arms like, the Patterson film or all those idiot kids you see on the internet who say they saw a Bigfoot, and then you see just some kid walking over a stupid driveway. No, this creature's arms did not move. It just, dum, 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 just, and stepped over the barbed wire fence that went to its knees. Okay. So this thing was probably an easy 12 feet tall. I mean, this thing was big. It was probably an easy 2 tons. I mean, this thing was wide. It probably had like 6 foot wide shoulders. I mean, this thing was monstrously huge. Okay, freaked me out, even though I've seen Bigfoot twice already. Each time so a couple of weeks, no, I would say about 2 months later, right? I go and I take some of these youngsters, young teenage people, up to this area because this one guy asked me, to go investigate an area. I decided to go up to the area with these guys and train them how to be Sasquatchers, or Squatchers, and train them the differences of, footprints of a bear, or a Sasquatch. A lot of people, when they see bear prints, they're thinking they're Sasquatches because the bears will overstep their footprints. Anyways, so we're up in this area, up in Myrtle Creek area. And the picture I'm showing you is the closest proximity of where I saw this thing was. And there was a lot of great signs that there's Sasquatching in this area. Moss covered boulders that were overlooking mountains, but only, it's like a walk trek, and then like a large area to where, like, if someone sat there and squatted, watching stuff. Okay. So we get up there, and I'm like looking around. We're right on top of this like little hillside overlooking this valley that had been clear cutted. And I look down, and there's this younger Sasquatch, looking over this stump, like he freaked out, like, what's making all that noise? Turns around, and he's like, oh my God. And his eyes got really big. I mean, he got really big. And it jumped down underneath or behind the stump. And I was like, hey guys, don't look now. Don't act weird, but look down by that stump that's behind me, and you're going to see a Sasquatch. And the thing had just bolted, like fast. But throughout that day, we were being paralleled. When we had walked somewhere, we'd hear a heavy bipedal walking off the side of us, either the left or the right, and then we found this one area that I think was like a Sasquatch kind of home, kind of thing. It was like 4 large trees. And I mean, these were like, 2-3 foot diameter logs, that were just in a square almost. And the only access to it was another large tree that had fallen over these manzanita or blackberry bushes. The blackberry bushes, as we're walking up on this tree, what you could see, been a worn trail on it. They're probably like, 10, 15 feet deep of blackberry bushes. So you didn't want to fall off. And we go there, and it wasn't like a hunter's area where they would go and like cut the deer up and all that. This was there was deer carcasses there that were disassembled, in various states of decomposition. A lot of them literally looked like they had been gnawed on, legs broken, marrow sucked out of them. Some of the skulls look like they've been crushed. But here's the trick is they weren't buried at all. Okay. Pumas, bears love burying their kills. That way they can actually save them for later and nobody else will find them. Okay. So that was one of the incidences. And then I took these guys up to an area called Odell Lake area, where off from where our point of view was, you could see Odell Lake, and it was like, oh, okay. So we went driving up, and I had met a person who told me they went hiking and saw something up there recently, and I was like, okay, not a problem. So we drove up to this area, and it was also, a good time to teach them more about Sasquatching, or squatching, like, tree falls. Just because you see three trees leaning against each other does not mean it's a Bigfoot home. Okay, it could either just be random tree fall, or it was people using it as for a lean-to. Most likely it was people using like a blue tarp or something like that to make a small tent. Okay, but not a lot of it's also tree fall. But I was explaining to them like how primates, you can see like trees being smashed. It's not like they're setting a boundary, but it's more like when chimps and male gorillas need to make a statement on they're the man in charge, they would go around smashing stuff, right? And so I was showing them that. I was showing them the difference of tree falls, or like where tree breakage is from weather, and Sasquatches. So anyways, and then we got to the point where there was this large termite-ridden log. And I was showing them the difference between what a bear would do, which apparently there was like a bear had rooted into it somewhat, right? And then what a primate would do, right? And then right there and then we hear this behind us. Pretty trippy. And I look behind me, and there's this about 3 foot tall young Sasquatch, right? Standing in manzanita bushes. And he's obviously curious because I don't think he's actually seen a human in his entire life. His parents probably told him about us, but he never saw one. And I was just like, oh my God, guys, turn around and don't freak out. And we turn around, and he realizes we see him. So he does what normal children do, duck and try to hide, but still try to watch. And so all you can see is like this and above. So he was like trying to hide, and my friend Noah, oh my God, he did exactly what they did in the first Ghostbusters movie. He yelled, "Get her!" Don't ever yell that. Don't yell when you see Sasquatches, because if you yell, that's a bad sign. Anyways, long story short, this thing started hooting. Like when you hear the woo, okay, but it's loud, and you could hear the fear in its voice, right? And all of a sudden we hear this coming from the other side of the hill. And it was, oh, excuse my nose, probably 70, 80 yards, because it took a little while for him to start getting closer and closer. But this thing was sounded heavy. I mean, we had this guy who was like 400 pounds with us, and he was like 6 foot tall. No, he's about 5'11", but anyways, he was like 500 pounder. He was a big chubby dude, and he was just like freaking out, and he started running down the hill. I started telling everybody to run because I didn't want to have to explain to police that these people I went up there with got mangled by a Sasquatch. So that was a very, very, really trippy incident. Okay. So then after that, about, I think it was about 6 months later, uh, I was asked by a lady from Bigfoot.com to go and investigate a sighting. So I was like, sure, not a problem. So I'm driving up to the area, and it's between uh, Cottage Grove and Myrtle Creek area, right? And I'm driving along, and I'm like, well, I have to use the bathroom. So, and this is going to trip most of you guys out. It's yeah, this sighting's really going to trip you guys out because I think I'm the only person in history of the planet that's ever had this happen to them. So I stop at this outcropping on the road. It's like a little turnoff, right? And you can see where they had clear cutted some of the forest, but it's mainly a giant open meadow, right? And I'm standing on something that's probably about a cliff about 20 feet high, right? It's kind of like an arc. And so I'm sitting there relieving myself, just minding my own business. And as soon as I started, I hear this below me. I was like, oh my God, what was that? And I looked down, and there's this creature, a Sasquatch, looking up at me with a disgruntled face, like, you just peed on me, look. And then it realized what I was. And I'm realizing what it was, because I just realized I just pissed on something. Oh, geez, my nose. And it was pretty freaky. So it tries to put itself against the cliff, and I was like, oh my God. So I try to move to the left to see a better view. And now I'm thinking that there was more than one Sasquatch there because it sees me and it moves off to the right a bit. And I move to the right and it moves to the left, right? Trying to keep its way. And then I look to my right, I catch movement to my right because I was just like, oh God, I got to get my camera. But before I could get to my car, it was just like I turned and I'm seeing this Sasquatch, and it was probably 6 feet tall, very slender, and it looked like a female, and it's booking up the hill. It's running as fast as possible, and the creature that was behind me starts doing the emergency hooting sound. Woo, woo, woo. And all of a sudden, it sounded like King Kong coming down the mountainside opposite of the cliff, from where my car was parked. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get stomped by a huge monster of a Bigfoot. And I mean, it's smashing trees as it's going down the hill towards me and my vehicle. So I got in my vehicle as fast as possible and ripped out of there. And, oh, Jesus. So that was a pretty trippy sighting. Then I went to a place called the Weyerhaeuser Tree Farm. Okay, and that's where I've had two distinct sightings. Okay, first one, I was driving up. I just got my Bronco out of the shop. I had them rig it as silently as possible. I camoed it, like army camo painting, not the new digital stuff, but the older version. And I'm driving down the road, and I had noticed a tracks in front of me, because it just rained probably a couple of hours prior, and the tracks go and then they stop in the middle of the road. And it looked like in the treads, something had literally just flipped the truck. Not pushed it, but flipped it. And I looked down the side of the road or down the hill from the road, and there's this big old Bronco uh, just smashed, and I'm like, oh my God. So I go down there, and there's like the water cooler's been like chucked open, broken up to pieces. And, sorry, uh, it wasn't like a bear, because that's the first thing I look for is bear sightings, claw marks, anything like that, right? These were smashed. This thing was crunched on, mashed. And then the weirdest part was the front windshield. It looked like someone had pulled out a shotgun and shot out from the inside of it, because there's this big hole and it's splayed outward, from the glass. So I'm thinking maybe a Sasquatch was walking across the road. These guys stopped, freaked, shot at this thing, and it flung their vehicle as the guys ran for their lives, And then I came back a couple days later, and this thing had been thrown or rolled another, 50, 60 yards into the wood line, and it had to go over a tree trunk that was at least 3 feet wide. And this was a large, large, large tree. And I'm thinking no human could do that. I don't even think a bear could, but definitely a large 12-foot tall Sasquatch most likely probably could. Well, anyways, but prior to that, that part, the day that I first saw it, I decided I was going to just continue on with my research and driving up there. And I just got this camera called the Phaser. Oh my God, probably the worst camera ever, ever, ever to be had. I mean, so this photo you see right now is of a Sasquatch running away. And as you can see here, it's like, why is it always blurry photos? Well, mine was because I chose a stupid camera. That was horrible. Okay, never mind on that part. Anyways, that picture I just showed you, I was driving up the road, and here's this Sasquatch just squatting on a berm, right next to the road, and it was like about a 3-foot berm, and it's overlooking to the right, the right side of me, and it's like I don't know, 100-yard wide valley area, and you could distinctly see a deer trail going through it. So I'm thinking he's probably squatting there, maybe waiting for deers to come by so he can grab one. Well, anyways, he's obviously looking bored, and my vehicle, like I said, was completely camo painted. Even the grill, that every bit of chrome was painted camo. And I'm cruising up there, and I'm kind of going slow, especially after I see it, and I'm sitting there slowing down, and it kind of glances at me like that, and it's like, what the heck? And then it realized I'm not a bush, and it turns around and starts running into the tree line. So I gunned my Bronco up to that area where he stood, grabbed that phaser quick as possible, and I took a couple of shots, right? Because it looks like a little phaser gun. Horrible camera, but it looked neat. So that's this photo you actually see right now. And as you can see where I drew the line to where you could see where he stood and where he was, he got there in less than 4 seconds. I mean, it was that fast. He was gone. Okay, so we go a couple days back now ahead to where I saw the truck or Bronco in the wood line a little bit farther. So I'm like, wow. So I made a mental note, okay, to check it out again in a week or so, So I'm driving up the road, and this time I go farther into the interior of the Weyerhaeuser area. And I see that there had been a tree recently looked like it had been knocked over. Not cut down, but literally pulled down, because the tree roots have been uprooted. And it didn't look like any real wind damage or rain damage because most of the other trees are large pine trees. And there's a few firs that are next to them here and there, dispersed out. One was like literally covered in moss almost, standing next to this gigantic tree that had like a 3 foot trunk, and it was probably an easy, 80 feet in the air. Okay, then there's a couple of smaller pine trees in the area and stuff like that. But this one, as I park my Bronco in between the two sets of the trees that were on one side and that fallen tree, I noticed that there were, looked like about 6 footsteps in the long grass. And the grass is probably about 2.5 feet high. But the spaces between the footsteps were about 2.5, no, I'd say about 3 to 4 feet because I had to hop to each one, right? And the footprints down below were mashed reeds, so you couldn't really distinctly see big footprints, right? So I go to the tree and I'm looking around, but it definitely looked like something had snapped a bunch of the branches and pine nettles and laid them down in an area to make it kind of like a makeshift bedding, but left a lot of it overhanging, so it could probably sleep in privacy. And then on the other side of my vehicle, right, I go back and I'm looking at this fir that's covered in moss, and it's surrounded by manzanita bushes almost, But the really weird thing is there was tons and tons of young pine nettle branches. These are brand new pine nettles that are green, they're soft, and there was tons of them. What looked like they were been gathered up and laid down so people can sleep on them. And that's typical for what, apes and major primates do is they make nesting areas. They don't build houses, they don't build huts, they don't build tripods. Okay, they build nests under trees if they can. If not, they just build nests. And when I'm looking down, I could distinctly see about 4 humanoid life or prints, body prints. 2 looked like they were large, and then 2 were really small, probably about 2 to 3 feet tall. Okay, so I'm thinking this is where the family was sleeping, and the other one probably was either a lone male sleeping on its own, or like the teenager kind of sleeping on his own, or it could have been a different day. Anyways, so I'm like, this is a good place to do an apple trap, right? Apple traps are where you hang fruit like apples on a string, but high enough in the area to where a Sasquatch would have to, stand underneath and grab them. Okay, so you get footprints. So I emptied about 2 jugs of water down below my apple traps, and as I am hanging my apple trap up, above me on the really tall tree, I can hear a stifled breathing. Like, when people are trying to hide behind curtains or something like that and they're trying to breathe, they're scared to death, but they're trying not to let anybody hear them. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to scare what's up there. One, it could be a puma. Right. Next thing I know, I'm going to be having to fight a puma. It could be a black bear or something like that, or it could be a Sasquatch, because a lot of people well, you just see them disappear. Well, a lot of times they climb a tree. They are primates. Anyway, so I get done with the apple trap. I go casually to my Bronco and pull out one of those little throwaway cameras. Sorry, my nose is just itchy. And I'm gumming back to the tree. Now you got the fir, the large tree, a smaller tree, my Bronco here, and then the other tree. Well, I go for my Bronco, and I'm going to go around the tree so I can see what's up in the tree. Well, as I'm doing that, there's this doe, just a lone doe, just prancing, which is really weird. She looked like Pepe Le Pew, sort of how he does his, and she sees me, right? Now I'm in Army camos from when I was in the military. And she stops and she looks down to look at my hands. She notices I'm not carrying a rifle, I'm not carrying a bow, right? So her reaction instantly softened. She was just like, "Oh my god, it's a hunter. Oh, wait a minute. He doesn't have a weapon." She starts to prance around the tree the route I was going to go, right? And then all of a sudden something caught her attention up in the tree. She looks up, drops on her butt, and with as she's doing that, she's trying to turn, and her legs are doing like, just toot, 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 and she's not getting any traction until she gets off her butt, and she's looking behind her, not what's in front of her, which is me. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to get ran over by a deer. So I jump out of the way just in time as she runs right past me. And I mean, she just bolts past me, and I hear this loud thump. I mean, it sounded like, you took a bear, like a full size Kodiak grizzly, and dropped him off a ledge. It just like, and I turned and I see kind of like this slight of a big head disappear over the ledge, right? Because it's a little, then it just drops off like that, big, and it's an openish area, and then there's like a tree line about 100 yards away, right? And no, I say about 75 actually. So, and I'm about 50 yards from the drop off area. So I book over there as fast as I can, and I look down the ledge or down the hillside, and right there at the tree line, it's probably 12-foot tall, 10 to 12-foot tall saplings, and then they get larger and larger and larger trees. And I just see this black mass standing up vertical, about 10 feet tall, just blasting into the trees. Okay, so all I saw was its back and its legs, as it's. So that was one of the really trippiest sightings that I also had. It was just like, oh my God, that is so crazy. Didn't take a picture though, which I should have. It was like, oh my God, why didn't I take a picture of that? Jesus, it still haunts me today that I didn't take it. Okay, so that was all of my sightings that I had that I could truly confirm that were Sasquatches. Okay, I've had a couple other incidences, but I'm not going to really go into them that much because of the fact that I can't confirm they were Sasquatches. But I will give you some pointers that I've learned over my time of being a Sasquatch. Okay, most Sasquatches are pretty benign. They're not malevolent. I think the only ones that would be are when you're too close to their kids, right? Or they've had a lot of bad experiences with humans, like shooting them, whatnot, and they're very hostile towards them. Okay. Then also, if you want to have a good sighting, okay, first of all, don't scream and point, okay, because right there and then you're going to put a bad precedence on your sighting. 2, you're going to scare the Sasquatch. 3, you're going to scare everybody around you. Okay, instead of telling them to all look casually around, and then just tell them, where it is, but, casually look around, not everybody at the same time. That way they all can get references. But now once you see a Sasquatch and it's not being hostile, okay, if it is being hostile, move out of the area, just kind of like, walk as quickly as you can without running. If it starts chasing you, run as quick as possible, because most likely you won't be able to go hand to hand with the Sasquatch. Okay. That's why it's always good to bring some kind of protection with you into the wood line. Tasers, rifles, pistols, bear spray. Okay. But now if it is being benign and it's just being, casually looking at you from behind trees, then have you and your friends sit down, kind of like in pairs, and then have you do what they call grooming sessions, like chimps and orangutans and large apes will do. And that is you pretend to like rifle through their hair, right? And then, sorry about that, rifle through their hair and then pretend to pick out bugs and then eat them. Okay, it sounds kind of odd, but this is what primates do when they are most relaxed. Okay, is they groom each other, and this builds up their social bonds. Now, seeing this, the Sasquatch might actually relax more and say, wow, they actually groom each other. I wonder if I could get in on this. Now, if a Sasquatch does come down and sit next, now, if a Sasquatch does come down and sit next to you and put his back to you or something like that, or, and he's expecting to be groomed or she's expecting to be groom him, you'll be probably the only person in the history of Earth to be able to groom a Sasquatch. Or if it comes up and it starts playing with your hair, you're probably, very lucky person that a Sasquatch has decided to groom you and kind of count you as family. One thing you can do to increase their sightings is go into areas repeatedly. Okay, not just one time, because like Jane Goodall had explained that the more she went into a certain area after she saw these chimps, the more and more they got used to her presence, and then she was less scary to them. And then they were able to appear more often, Then also, you can bring food products like oranges and apples, leave them here and there. And that can, especially if there's a Sasquatch near you, just don't hand them food because then they'll associate humans and food and they might just start trying to steal your backpack. Okay. Uh, Two is they like, water areas. So if there's creeks nearby that have, ample fish, crayfish of any kind, frogs, that they love those areas. If there's caving areas nearby, they definitely love those. If you see deer trails, that's a good way to investigate Sasquatches is follow deer trails. Okay. And that's about it for, my tips on doing Sasquatches. Just always remain calm. Take photos, random photos. If a Sasquatch is like behind you. So just take photos here and there, random videos and stuff, especially if you see or hear like, footprints to your left. Just click, 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 click without having to look that way. And long as you're not looking at them, they'll look at you. Okay. So I thank you very much for your time. And I hope you guys have a lot of great squatching out there. Remember to keep an open mind, keep an open eye, and keep yourself safe. Have a great day.